In the great wars that defined the American nation, the story of North Carolina is one of complexity and contradiction. They contributed Loyalists and revolutionaries, Unionists and Confederates. The people who called this state home grappled with just who they were and where their loyalties resided. The result was hardship and loss, but also victory and rebirth. In 1770, much of North Carolina was still considered the frontier. Most of its 200,000 inhabitants lived on the windswept coasts. But like the inhabitants of the other 12 colonies, they lived under British rule, were subjects of the king, governed by a royal appointee and subjected to taxation. And like the residents in places such as Boston and Philadelphia, North Carolinians had grown weary of British rule and what they perceived as corrupt tax laws that exploited them to fund foreign wars. They formed their own protest movement, calling themselves regulators. Years before the Revolution began, they had already engaged in hostilities with the militia formed by William Tryon, North Carolina's ruthless royal governor. The regulators were defeated by Tryon's men near Great Alamance Creek. 7 captives were executed as an example, but Governor Tryon's suppression would not endure. By 1774, royal authority in North Carolina began to collapse. Patriot leaders established a provincial Congress and take over most of the governance of the colony. On May 31st, 1775, Royal Governor Tryon's successor, Josiah Martin, flees the capital at New Bern. First, he shelters at Fort Johnston on the coast. Then, he seeks refuge aboard a British warship. From exile, he plots to restore British authority in the region. He hopes to mobilize support in the backcountry, where there is a large population of Scottish immigrants. He expects to raise up an army of loyalists that will link with the British regulars arriving by sea. Together, they will subdue the rebellious colonists. Wielding broadswords, dirks, and donning kilts, Martin's group of Scottish loyalists attempt an attack on a Patriot position north of Wilmington, but the loyalists are thrown back by a hail of gunfire. The Battle of Moores Creek Bridge ends in a Patriot victory. They gain control of the region as a result, and the supporters of the British Crown disperse, demoralized. North Carolina becomes the first colony to authorize its delegates in the Continental Congress to vote for American independence. Along the western frontier, the British encouraged their Native American allies to raid Patriot settlements in the upcountry. Beginning with assaults on Fort Watauga and Eaton Station, a series of raids are undertaken by the Choctaw, Creek, and Cherokee tribes. But after a British defeat at Sullivan's Island in South Carolina, their support of the indigenous peoples evaporates. In the summer of 1776, North Carolina militia launch an invasion of Cherokee lands, destroying dozens of villages and forcing the Cherokee to give up large tracts of their homeland. Between 1776 and 1780, troops from North Carolina fight in the north and south. They fight side by side with South Carolinians at Sullivan's Island, and they fight under General George Washington's command at Brandywine, Germantown, and Monmouth. They endure the harsh winter at Valley Forge. In May of 1780, many North Carolinians helping to defend Charleston are captured after a 6-week siege when the British finally take the city. In anticipation of a British invasion, North Carolina loyalists mobilize once more, but Patriot militias attack and rout the loyalists at Ramsor's Mill in June and Colson's Mill in July. General Lord Charles Cornwallis initiates a 3-pronged approach from South Carolina and enters North Carolina, where he finds little enthusiasm for the British cause. Those who do sign up to fight for the crown are assigned to his western prong, commanded by Major Patrick Ferguson. Ferguson threatens and intimidates Patriot supporters. Enraged by Ferguson's actions, rugged patriots, the Over-Mountain Men, rally to the Patriot cause, coming to blows with Loyalist forces on October 7, 1780. At Kings Mountain, the Patriots score a major victory. They succeed in surrounding Ferguson and his men, killing hundreds, including Ferguson. It is a turning point in the fortunes of North Carolina. That same month, Nathaniel Greene accepts command of the Southern Department. After the defeat at Kings Mountain, with his flank exposed, Cornwallis is forced to return to South Carolina. The Americans, under General Daniel Morgan, follow up with a double envelopment of British soldiers and gain a key victory at the Battle of Cowpens in January 1781 over the reviled Bannister Tarleton. Cornwallis burns his baggage train to increase his column's speed and chases after General Nathaniel Greene's Patriot forces. Despite many close calls, Greene deftly avoids battle and crosses the rain-swollen Dan River in Virginia. Cornwallis and his army's exhaustion mingles with ongoing disillusionment. While Greene rebuilds the main American army in the South, North Carolina Loyalists suffer another defeat. On February 25, 1781, a group of Loyalist militia mistook American cavalry led by Light Horse Harry Lee for British dragoons. By the time they realize their error, it's too late. The Continentals rout the Loyalists in what comes to be known as Pyle's Massacre. In February of 1781, Greene leads the American army back into North Carolina. Cornwallis moves north with a force of now mostly British regulars. On March 15th, Greene and Cornwallis meet at the Battle of Guilford Courthouse. Greene establishes 3 lines of battle. Each line was better defended than the last. Greene's army inflicts terrible casualties on the British, who are slowed but not stopped in the largest Revolutionary War battle in North Carolina. The battle is a tactical victory for the British, who end the day in control of the battlefield. But more than a quarter of Cornwallis's soldiers are killed or wounded, men he cannot easily replace. He cannot risk his remaining men on further engagements, and decides to abandon the Carolina backcountry. Having had quite enough of the fruitless struggles in the Carolina backcountry, Cornwallis marches his exhausted army to Wilmington on the coast. From there, his army travels to Virginia, where he hopes to find more success and less frustration. But it is in Virginia, at Yorktown, that Cornwallis and his army will be surrounded and decisively defeated in October 1781 by George Washington and his French allies. Skirmishes in North Carolina between Patriot and Loyalist militias continue until the last British troops withdraw from the state in November of 1781. 2 years later, the Treaty of Paris officially ends the war. North Carolina remembers its revolutionary past, from Alamance, Moores Creek Bridge, Guilford Courthouse, and numerous other sites associated with the war for American independence. Scores of conflicts were fought on this land to define a nation. That legacy continues as generations of fighters have trained here, from paratroopers who fought in France to today's U.S. Army Special Forces. The members of the American Battlefield Trust are proud to have preserved more than 2,500 acres of hallowed battlegrounds in North Carolina, so that current and future generations can stand where history happened, where they can reflect on the past and look ahead to the future.